Drop a cool montage. Hi, it's me, Neat. I'm the composer for Team Lumber and of course for Inset. Don't mind me looking this way and reading off a script. Suffice to say, this project felt the most daunting among all I faced during its early stages, asking me to step out of my comfort zone, write more traditionally and learn many genres. However, most of the doubts are now gone. I'm proud of how things are sounding so far and how far I've come in figuring out the music for a story in this hellish city. I'm not a technical guy, I don't talk a lot about what I do, but I'll do my best to give insights and make this as helpful, or at least as entertaining as it could be. Enough preaching, let's start. The reference tracks I got are a lot of music from the 2000s era in all sorts of media. Memorable ones are Need for Speed games, a lot of hip hop and rap rock track in there. Junkie X Auto Action Radius is the one that stuck with me. Hive gave a nice idea of how break-based stuff should sound. There were also harsher things like metal and obscure electronic genres, Crank soundtrack, and recently FX Twins come to that age, for example. Techno and club song, like Blade's acid sounding club theme and Triple X soundtrack. I do a lot of experimental electronic music, but lack experience in more established dance music genres, so those took some trial and error. Other vocal songs, especially heavy singing like Korn, animated rapping like Limp Bizkit or Chino Moreno and Deftones, they were tough nuts to crack. It took a lot of practice to keep up with the instrumentals. There's a reason I keep joking about me being a soft-spoken Asian boy tries to be Limp Bizkit M4A ASMR. But I've learned that as long as you're doing a decent job and delivering confidently, it'll be fine. Confidence is the most important part. Always keep in mind that most people won't find your singing weirder than you hearing yourself back. Gotta hammer in this fact when you are just starting out recording your own voice. It's not an excuse to not learn and practice, it's more so that you practice, but when it comes time to perform, you just wail. First, there were a couple demos, some quite cringe. It's usual for my soundtrack work to go through this phase, I feel. We all come in with an idea of what it should sound like, iterations of those ideas after I've tried them out, before having to balance between what's learnable to what the composer's identity and strengths are. 6, 7. I started accumulating racks and building a better idea of what the game should sound like over time. There was an initial phase where it sounded more low definition / flash gamey, like the stuff you would find on Newgrounds 10 years ago, and I didn't feel like it was working. Before eventually evolving to be edgier, kinda like the game taking itself more seriously phase. Gritty high-octane distorted synths and electric guitar are key, mysterious ambience and cinematic compositions when the situation calls for it also. One eureka moment can be placed to Trailblazer, an instrumental that has yet to be revealed. And also a vocal track called Deadly Spectacle. The two tracks laid the foundation of what the bread and butter combat tracks should sound like. Deadly was also the first place where we were happy about when it came to vocal stuff. The soundtrack is quite varied. This fits with Love's idea of wanting that music to feel like Hotline Miami, where it's more of a collection of cool, vibrant music, like a compilation album in some ways. This point doesn't show too well yet in the demo, but I hope you all will notice when the full soundtrack comes out. Important character themes are all in different genres, kind of like each of them have their own world of sounds that we would like to keep them in when it comes to themes. I'm not a technical guy again, but I'll try my best. There's a trick with guitar and bass for sounding big. You put a bass line in the middle. You then try to record the same guitar line 2 times. Put one on the left, the other on the right. When you try to play the same thing twice, there will still be imperfections, especially when you suck at guitar like me. This creates a kind of stereo effect that would make it wide, but doesn't dilute the sound. In most cases. I also like varying the options between the 2 guitar channels, bridge pickup on the left, neck pickup on the right, varying the amp settings and tone, different pedal chains, etc. This is a tried and true method that has been around for a long time. A single distorted electric guitar in the middle takes up so much space. Why was that hard to say? That it's hard to mix. I reserve the middle for vocals, lead instruments, or even a solo guitar. Yes, carving out the guitar to leave more space for the guitar, based. Which is another cool part of the trick because it can further help distinguish the chord guitar from the lead guitar. I teased this a bit in the previous section. If you're making many songs for a project, save some racks or anything equivalent to save these sets of bullshit for later usage. They can help save a few clicks or save brain power when you're drawing a blank. On a practical note, they help retain coherency within the soundtrack. You connect some sounds to some things, or it's simply something the developer likes. You just have them at region and grab them. Vocals have been tricky for me. The key thing will always be you can't turn turd into gold. You should be spending a lot of time figuring out the best projection of your voice, and it can also change between sections of a song, so experiment. Even with rapping, rolling and initiate creeps, vocal performance sounds totally different. I also like to make use of multiple good takes that I have. I keep the verses mainly solo, the other good takes become occasional backup vocals that says the same thing, you know? And letting them all play for the chorus as a contrast for a fuller section. From a more technical side, if you're using a lot of saturation or distortion effects, you gotta be careful about sibilants. Sometimes I remove them prior, but end up having to cut them out again when a parallel compressor or an overdrive brings them back up again.
Over the line, you see yourself in the smoke. There's nothing left out unhoped. Your race about to die cause you stepped over the line.
Use the EQ to find parts of your voice that sound less good and turn them down. Dynamic EQ also works here. For me, mine tends to get nasally and I shape accordingly. Lastly, good compression comes in the form of multiple stages, and this doesn't only apply to vocals also. The first one could occasionally be catching loud spikes and not exactly compressing on every single word. Then it's the next one that does the more general /glue compression that activates more regularly. So yeah, don't make one thing do all the heavy lifting when it comes to technical troubleshooting side of production. But of course, when it comes to creative processing, break the rules. Lastly, album balancing. A mistake from the Lumber soundtrack albums was that I didn't check the final audio balance among all the finished tracks. It's not impressive for deep technique per se, I was just lazy and stupid not to do it. I feel a bit bad. If you've got auto songs that will be released together, chuck all the rendered files into a project file and listen through them. Usually when mastering them individually, I use the U-Lean loudness meter and try to push to -7 or -8 LUFS. Those are rather safe range to get to. I'm mostly careful when it comes to pushing for more, as I'm not a proper mastering engineer. If you've looked into it a bit, you will know that these perceived loudness metrics are great rulers, but not perfect indicators. So, still nothing beats chucking them all in one place and listening to everything one more time together with your human ears. And it's not just loudness balancing. I've made some light tone adjustments with EQ to steer the tone closer together. I think that helped the demo album feel more like one singular unit, more cohesive and together than my previous works, and those things are easier to do when you don't have to constantly switch between multiple project files when the songs are all disconnected. So yeah, do this, please. That's all I've got for general tricks. Let's dive into some songs, and with that, we are starting with a banger. Remember a track I said we haven't reviewed? Oh, well, I got a green light. Trailblazer was the song when it comes to cementing the instrumentals, although I got lazy on this one and separate one guitar recording into 2 amp tracks. Mono bass also shown here and is responsible for the majority of the bass in this project. I did get a proper bass at the start of this year, but I'm not too great at it yet. I also have yet to buy a bass pick, and it's the playstyle I mostly want for this project so far. Trailblazer also slowed down to become glazed. That's how the demo credit track came to be. This song was important as it not only solidified the combat tracks but also briefly introduced what we wanted for the calmer vibes as well. It was originally composed for a trailer, and this part would be the title drop. For that reason, I'm pretty sure we can expect this track to take center stage later on in development. Honestly, not too much to say, as it was built on the framework of our inspirations for the soundscape, a rock/metal thing with a dash of video game touch, and it was the first song I executed well after some experimentation. And even after all these years, I still can't escape Emin breaks.
Not just a bear you can poke. Don't get too close, you get shook. Your race about to die as you stepped over the line.
Over the Line's instrumental came from a failure to make Meat Grinder. Love said he wanted it to be even harsher, but I was like, nah bro, this one ain't gonna work. I'll start something new for that. This one's gonna be a rap rock track. I would consider Over the Line and Deadly to be like a general theme of sorts, where it's just about the nature of crimes and violence inside the city. So it was a bit tough writing the lyrics at times because there are only so many ways you could say, I caused souls to leave their bodies in a non-family friendly manner. It started out as, haha, I use guns, to developing this hyper-violence character who's dead set on getting a spotlight in the city. It looks down on others and shit talks other imaginary gangs. Creating a fan fiction was how I wrote the lyrics. You don't need a lot of different parts to finish a song, but it's still okay to write many parts, or in my case, riffs, to pick ones that work together best. Over the Line is mainly comprised of 3 main riffs I handpicked from around 5. I then developed other elements around said riffs. A pure instrumental was formed first, and the rest became a jigsaw puzzle of arranging the elements I had to fit with the lyrics. Arrangement is your main tool for making a song feel dynamic. Figuring out the vocal processing was kinda done during the recording. That's how I like to do work. Because I'm here, I sit here, record here with this mic, and I'm in front of my PC. I start with recording just an okay performance, experiment with what effects I wanted where, before knowing what I'll sound like, and then focus on recording solid final takes with knowledge in mind. The grayed out boxes you see are me disabling the stuff, using what I said about recording multiple takes and assembling them together. Even if a section doesn't require doubling, having the other takes has been a lifesaver. When there's a take I'm happy with but want to fix a few words, for example, that's that kind of deal. Love was so happy with Over the Line, by the way, that he sent me a DMC for edit.
Not just a bear you can poke. Don't get too close, you get shook. You race about.
And it was chosen to be the first vocal track to be revealed, along with the gameplay trailer. However, there's actually a vocal track that was done prior to that.
No time to be sensible. I'm crazy, baby, making trouble.
Deadly Spectacle was the first successful vocal track. I believe it's a great example of creating variations for the vocals. In addition to swapping between rapping and singing, I also spiced up the rapping parts by changing to the delay track. The second verse kept moving around between different combinations of raw vocals, plus the echo, plus the doubling.
Should have died away 20 years ago. Is it blinding? True that acceptance? Your time is up. My condolences. Think post days. What would you like on your grave? I'm here to deliver the city to a new age.
There was also the groove battle section. Inspired by the twerking stickman. I slid a dental floss box across the guitar strings, and the plastic definitely was not strong enough and imprints were left on the thing. By the way, here's an example of a riff variation that didn't make it in. Originally a more somber idea, which was changed to be more energetic and used as the pre-chorus. You can hear how the strings eventually inspired the last guitar solo.
In Delaware, you don't just get by. Show 'em what you got, pick the plots to die in. In Delaware, you don't just. No time to be sensible. I'm crazy, baby.
Fried Dining went through 3 variations before reaching its final form. I wrote the song in increasing intensity. At first, everything was too light, before I gradually shifting, kinda here, like that, the graphic as shown. I shifted to a higher starting energy, to the point where we could get to the climax that we wanted. I got Orbital's Technologique part as the reference, and it inspired the strings in the earlier section. Love wanted a track that intensifies along with the battle, and my idea was for a song to turn from electronic to rock as it goes on. I remember the specification where the song should transform at around the 2-minute mark, as that would be when the combat in the restaurant stage usually ramps up for an average player. And I was like, one day we will do a proper dynamic music system. Blank Spree. If you've listened to the demo soundtrack, which you should, or else, you know that its length is a whopping 40 minutes long. Grammar. A contributor to that length is a 3-minute long shop theme where an average player hears 10 seconds of. If you listen to the 2-minute mark, you'll hear one of the most cursed things you'll ever have the pleasure of. I thought it would be funny to sample the voice lines and scratch them up. I used the slicing and pitch shifting technique presented in a short by Poet Mystery. Used the auto slice function in Ableton Simpler and mapped the pitch shifting to my MIDI controller. Oh, and where's the original track? I deleted it cause I'm a professional composer. I put on a smiley emoji in the script, so I had to do it. It was mentioned that they wanted vinyl scratches in the combo tracks, and this is simply an unhinged way of fulfilling that request. It almost didn't make the cut, by the way. I'm surprised it made the cut. Quite the weirdest kid on the block this song is. One thing I wanted to say about this one is that I sampled a traditional Thai percussive instrument called a sheng. It's just a joke with myself that like, hey, I should do more Thai stuff. So here it is. In addition to that, I want to talk about another unreleased track as well. It's Cass's theme, and it's quite a special one. The conceptualization of Cass really started when Loaf and DB told me that they would like to take a more somber turn with the character, focusing on themes of loneliness, unbelongingness, and the questioning of one's own autonomy. They wanted a shoegaze track, akin to a softer Deftones song. The one I got as reference was Minerva. This was probably my hardest writing experience so far until that point. I've had to open more of myself up in the lyrics and give an introspective performance, something I don't do often or at all actually with my music. I remember sitting in the guitar booth for hours feeling unhappy with my composition and frustrated with figuring out how to sing the lyrics. The deeper I go into it, the more I realize that as much of the lyrics stem from Ensid's story that is a bit wacky, it contained themes that a lot of people in the modern world can relate to. Perhaps we would get a chance to dive deeper into this in the future, but for now it's best that we hold something back a bit. I tried a bunch of shoegaze tuning, one including That Gay. I soon realized I wasn't smart enough for it yet. The final song is extremely simplistic, with mostly 7th chords played with the top 3 strings of the guitar. The instrumentals need not be dense, and the oomph will be carried by the vocals melodies. The advice I would give for a guitar tone like this is to go ham. Like on the left side, I had a simple compressor, and the cool thing was putting reverb before the overdrive. For vocals, you will see that the tracks being named again signified my frustration from recording over and over again. There's some light pitch correction, which is turned off for the pre-chorus because it felt better that way. Echo fuzz is the main effect I found in Ableton that makes it sound kind of like Deftone.
Them sing, drowning in nothing,
I had some earlier thinner vocal tests, but decided to go with a fuller tone so that I'm not drowned out by everything else. Let's wrap up. Those are all the things that I thought would be interesting to say. Never Safe in Delaware has been a learning experience, and I'm excited to share more about it in the coming future. Meanwhile, if you've still got questions about the soundtrack or anything really, feel free to drop a comment. This is totally not for engagement. I didn't go into specific plugins as I did for the previous Lumber's music vlog, as I genuinely mostly still use the same tools. The change is marginal at best. The only one I could think of that I started using recently would be Dragonfly Reverb. I find them amazing for more organic sounding reverbs, and they're my favorites when it comes to really short verbs, early reflection stuff. Which leads me to the last message that I would like to leave to musicians, and that is to focus on making stuff instead of acquiring stuff. I'm not talking about simply buying gear and plugins, but I'm also talking about that you have to make sure that you aren't just mindlessly consuming YouTube tutorials as well. When you have a decent handle on music production, the less they'll benefit you. Not saying they aren't good, but it's diminishing returns. Especially when I feel that people are hungrier than ever to hear ideas, personalities, and individualities compared to finding your minute production mistakes. In game dev, it's similar to escaping tutorial hell, where you only look up specific new techniques when necessary, because the more you finish, right, the more you gain experience, and it is mostly your experience that will help you make better decisions in your next song. And it's the process of repeatedly working with what you have in your environment that will help you develop a unique sound that people will come back to you for. It's not about having access to everything, it's about getting better with what you have. Finally, I would like to express how proud I am to work on this, and I'm thrilled by how much value Love and DB had always placed on the music when it comes to video game projects. As Never Safe in Delaware becomes our most narratively ambitious so far, most ambitious on all fronts really, you can bet your ass I'll give my all to ensure the music is a banger with all caps. Yeah. That's it. Bye.